Hey, I'm Susan King, 30, a data analyst from Miami. My husband and I worked hard to buy a vacation home in Key West for my parents to enjoy a dream getaway. Sounds generous, right? But things took a wild turn. My parents and brother demanded I let him take over the place, claiming he'd manage it for the family. I flat out refused, thinking that'd shut it down. Oh, how wrong I was. It all kicked off at a chaotic family cookout where their pushy demands sparked a firestorm. Tensions boiled over secrets unraveled and trust got obliterated. Then came a jaw-dropping break-in that flipped everything upside down. I had to take a stand, and my plan. It left them absolutely stunned. Stick around to see how this family drama exploded, how I uncovered their betrayal, and what I did to reclaim control. On a sweltering summer day in suburban Miami, my husband Derek and I reluctantly pulled up to my parents' house for their annual cookout. The backyard hummed with chatter, neighbors and relatives milling around, the sizzle of burgers on the grill filling the air. I plastered on a smile, but my gut told me these gatherings always brought trouble. My parents had a way of turning a lighthearted day into something heavy, and I was already on edge. As Derek and I grabbed sodas from a cooler, Douglas and my sister-in-law Cheryl swaggered over, their faces flushed from too many drinks. Douglas's voice was loud, his words slurring slightly as he leaned in close. "Susan, we gotta talk about that Key West house," he said, his arm draped over Cheryl's shoulders. "You're barely there. Let us keep handling it. We need a place to unwind." You know, Cheryl nodded vigorously, her eyes a bit unfocused. "It's perfect for us to just get away from all the stress," she added, her tone overly earnest, like they'd rehearsed this. I narrowed my eyes, sensing a hidden agenda. That vacation home was my gift to my parents, not a playground for anyone else. "You've stayed there when I've allowed it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That's enough, isn't it?" But Douglas pressed harder, his tone sharper. "Don't be so stingy, Susan. We could use it more often." "It's just sitting there," Cheryl chimed in, her words tumbling out. "You've got everything, but you can't share with family." Their pushiness felt like a coordinated attack, and I wasn't buying their relaxation excuse. Before I could push back, a commotion broke out near the buffet table. My nephew, Connor, 10, and my niece, Harper, 8, were darting around laughing as they dodged between guests. In their frenzy, Connor's plate tilted, flinging a glob of barbecue sauce onto a neighbor's crisp white dress. The woman let out a sharp yelp, her hands flying to the stain as sauce trickled down her skirt. Harper stopped dead, clutching her juice cup, while Connor snickered, oblivious to the glares. The crowd hushed, eyes darting between the mess and the kids. I stepped forward to smooth things over, but my mother cut in first, her voice slicing through the tension. "Susan, why didn't you stop them? You saw how wild they were." My father, arms folded, piled on. "You need to take responsibility here." I froze, my jaw tightening. Responsibility? Those were Douglas's kids, not mine. Derek's hand brushed mine, a silent signal to stay calm, but my patience was thinning. "They're not my children," I said, my voice low but firm. "Maybe Douglas and Cheryl should keep them in check." Douglas overheard and snapped, "Don't lecture me, Susan. You're always acting superior with that fancy house." Cheryl jumped in, her tone biting. "Yeah, you're sitting on that property, but you won't even help us out." The words stung, drawing curious glances from the guests. My parents didn't step in to diffuse things, instead, they doubled down. My mother's eyes narrowed. "Susan, you're blowing this out of proportion. Just let Douglas handle the house." "It's not a big ask." My father's stern nod backed her up, as if I was the one being unreasonable. My chest tightened, a mix of anger and disbelief churning inside. This wasn't about the kids or the spilled sauce, it was about control. They wanted my property, something I'd worked years to afford, handed over like it was nothing. I took a deep breath, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "No. That house is for Mom and Dad to enjoy, not for anyone else to take over." End of discussion. Douglas's face reddened, and Cheryl's glare could have burned a hole through me. The backyard fell silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Derek tugged my sleeve, his voice low. We should go. I nodded, my heart racing with frustration. We gathered our things and headed for the car, the sounds of the cookout fading behind us. As we drove off, a bitter taste lingered. My family wasn't just asking for a favor, they were trying to claim what wasn't theirs. I had no clue how much deeper their betrayal would run. A few days after the cookout, my mother started calling nonstop, her tone dripping with urgency. My phone buzzed relentlessly, her name flashing on the screen every few hours. I sighed, already dreading the conversation, but I picked up on her fifth call that day. Susan, you need to stop being so stubborn, Mom said, her voice sharp and insistent. Douglas needs access to the Key West house. He's under so much pressure, work the kids, everything. Let him keep managing it. It's the least you can do for family. Her words felt like a lecture, as if I owed Douglas something for existing. I gripped the phone, my patience fraying. Mom, he's stayed there before when I allowed it, I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. Why does he need to manage it now? But she doubled down, her voice softening into a manipulative plea. He just needs a break, Susan. You have so much. Why can't you share? I ended the call abruptly, her words echoing in my head. Something wasn't right. Douglas had been pushy at the cookout, and now Mom was piling on. I couldn't shake the feeling they were hiding something. That night I sat at my desk scrolling through emails from the utility company for the Key West house. Derek leaned over my shoulder, sensing my unease. What's wrong? He asked. I didn't answer right away. My eyes locked on a string of water and electric bills way higher than they should have been for an empty vacation home. My heart sank as I dug deeper, cross-referencing dates and payments. The numbers didn't add up. For the past 2 years since I'd asked Douglas to keep an eye on the property during my busy work seasons, the usage had spiked, consistent with someone living there full-time. I found a hidden folder in my email buried under spam, with confirmations from a rental platform. Douglas had been listing my house online, pocketing thousands of dollars without a word to me. My blood boiled. This wasn't just negligence, it was betrayal. I opened our family group chat, my fingers trembling as I typed. Douglas cared to explain why my house has been rented out for 2 years. I attached screenshots of the utility bills and rental confirmations, my message blunt and unyielding. The chat went silent for a full hour, an eternity in our usually noisy thread. Then Douglas replied, his tone defensive. You're making a big deal out of nothing, Susan. I was just making use of an empty house. Cheryl jumped in, her message dripping with sarcasm. Wow, Susan, you're really blowing this out of proportion. I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched. Before I could respond, my father chimed in. Susan, stop overreacting, Dad wrote. Douglas was helping out, keeping the place active. You should be grateful. Mom followed with a long paragraph, her words a mix of guilt and accusation. We're family, Susan. Why are you so selfish? That house could help Douglas get back on his feet. I couldn't believe it. They were defending him, acting like I was the villain for protecting my own property. The realization hit hard. They weren't just siding with Douglas. They were likely in on it, maybe even splitting the profits. I put my phone down, my mind racing. Derek sat beside me, his voice steady. You don't owe them anything, Susan. This is your house. His words grounded me, but the sting of betrayal burned deep. My family had been using my generosity against me, turning my gift into their personal cash machine. I wasn't going to let this slide. The next morning, I called my property manager, Francis Perry, a no-nonsense guy I'd hired to check on the house occasionally. Francis, I need the locks changed on the Key West property. I said, my voice firm. Douglas no longer has access, and I want you to take over completely. Francis didn't hesitate, his tone professional. Got it, Susan. I'll have a locksmith out today, and I'll install new security codes. I also asked him to check the property for any signs of unauthorized use, my gut telling me there was more to uncover. By afternoon, Francis sent photos of the house, strange furniture in the living room, unfamiliar clothes in the closets, and a stack of takeout containers in the kitchen. It was clear Douglas hadn't just rented it out. He'd let strangers treat my house like a cheap Airbnb. I felt sick, my trust in my family shattered. I sent one final message to the group chat. The locks are being changed. Douglas, you're done with the house? I'm beyond disappointed. Mom replied instantly, her words frantic. Susan, you're tearing this family apart. Dad added, this is uncalled for. You're punishing your brother for no reason. But I was done listening to their excuses. I leaned back in my chair, a mix of anger and relief washing over me. Handing the property to Francis felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My family's betrayal had cut deeper than I'd expected, but I wasn't going to let them guilt me into submission. They thought they could manipulate me, but I was ready to take control, and they had no idea what was coming next. 1 week later, Francis called me, his voice laced with panic. Susan, you need to get down to Key West now. He said, his words rushed. Someone tried to break into the house last night. My stomach dropped as he explained the security cameras caught Douglas, of all people, tampering with the gate lock and prying at the back door of my vacation home. My mind reeled. After I'd changed the locks and cut off his access, Douglas had the audacity to try to force his way in. I told Francis to send me the footage and call the police immediately, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. By the time I checked my email, the video was waiting. There he was, Douglas, in a grainy night vision clip, wielding a crowbar as he worked on the gate. He moved to the back door, jamming the tool into the lock until it gave way, the metal scraping loudly. A second figure lingered in the shadows, someone I didn't recognize, but Douglas was unmistakable. My heart pounded as I watched him slip inside, only to freeze when the alarm blared. Within minutes, police lights flashed in the frame, and officers tackled Douglas to the ground, cuffing him as he shouted excuses. The second figure bolted, leaving Douglas to face the consequences alone. Francis followed up with another call. The police have him in custody, he said, his tone grim. They're charging him with trespassing and property damage. The gate's mangled and the back door's frame is cracked. I closed my eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. My own brother had tried to break into my house, the one I'd poured years of savings into for our parents. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, but a part of me wasn't surprised. Douglas had already shown his true colors by renting out the place behind my back. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was Mom. Her voice was frantic, almost unrecognizable. Susan, you have to help Douglas, she pleaded. He's in jail. It was just a stupid mistake. He didn't mean any harm. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. A mistake, I shot back, my voice rising. He broke into my house, Mom. He used a crowbar. That's not an accident. She kept going, her words tumbling over each other. He was just upset, Susan. He acted impulsively because you cut him off. Please drop the charges. He's your brother. Her tone shifted from begging to guilt-tripping, as if I was the one tearing the family apart. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Mom, he crossed a line. He's been stealing from me for years, and now this, I'm not letting it go. She gasped, her voice breaking. How can you be so heartless? He's struggling. But her words only fueled my resolve. Douglas wasn't struggling. He was entitled, thinking he could take whatever he wanted. I ended the call, my hands trembling, and turned to Derek, who'd been listening quietly. Am I wrong? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head, his expression firm. You're protecting what's yours, Susan. Don't let them guilt you. What stung most was my father's silence. I'd expected Dad to call, to say something, anything. Maybe he'd defend Douglas like Mom, or at least try to mediate. But nothing. Not a text. Not a voicemail. His absence spoke louder than any argument, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. My parents had always favored Douglas, but this letting him face legal consequences without a word felt like they were abandoning me too. I stared at my phone, the screen dark, and felt a hollow ache in my chest. I called Francis back the next day, my mind made up. Don't let anyone near the property without my approval, I instructed. And keep the police report on file. I'm not dropping the charges. Francis agreed, his voice steady. The police have the footage and they're moving forward with the case. Douglas could face a fine or worse depending on the judge. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. For the first time, I felt a flicker of control, like I was finally standing up to the chaos my family had unleashed. As the week went on, I learned more from the police report Francis forwarded. Douglas had claimed he was just checking on the house, but the crowbar and broken locks told a different story. The damage wasn't extensive, about $1,000 to fix the gate and door, but the violation was personal. My house wasn't just a building, it was a symbol of my hard work, my sacrifice. Douglas had tried to take that from me, and my parents' defense of him only deepened the wound. I sat with Derek that night, the police report spread out on our kitchen table. They think I'll cave, I said, my voice steady but cold. But I'm done being their doormat. Derek squeezed my hand, his support unwavering. I knew this was just the beginning of the fallout, but I was ready to face it. My family had pushed me too far, and I wasn't backing down. A few days after the break-in, my parents showed up at my doorstep in Miami. The doorbell rang as I was sipping coffee, and my heart sank when I saw Mom and Dad through the peephole, their faces set in grim determination. I opened the door, bracing myself for what was coming. Mom stepped forward first, her voice trembling but firm. "Susan, we need to talk about Douglas," she said, clutching her purse like a shield. "You have to drop those charges and let him manage the Key West house again. This has gone too far." Dad stood behind her, his arms crossed, his silence louder than any words. I felt a surge of frustration, but before I could respond, Derek appeared beside me, his presence steadying. "Let's hear them out," he whispered, though his eyes told me he was as skeptical as I was. I nodded, stepping aside to let them in. As they sat on my couch, I called my best friend, Joyce Brooks, who'd always been my rock in family drama. "Joyce, can you come over?" I asked, needing her sharp perspective. She arrived within minutes, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension in the room. Mom wasted no time. "Susan, you're ruining your brother's life," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "Those charges could destroy him. He made a mistake, that's all." Dad finally spoke, his voice low and authoritative. "You've always been too hard on Douglas. Give him back access to the house, it's for the family." Their words hit like a punch, as if I was the one in the wrong for protecting my property. I took a deep breath, my voice steady but sharp. "Let's get one thing straight," I said, locking eyes with Mom. "Douglas didn't just make a mistake. He rented out my house for 2 years, pocketed thousands, and then broke in with a crowbar when I cut him off." "And you're defending him?" Joyce nodded beside me, her expression fierce. "Susan's right," she said, her voice cutting through the air. "Douglas betrayed her trust, and you're acting like it's her fault." Mom's face crumpled, but she pushed back. "He's struggling, Susan. You have so much. Why can't you help him?" Dad leaned forward, his tone accusing. "You're tearing this family apart over a house. It's selfish." I felt my blood boil, their favoritism laid bare. Joyce squeezed my hand, urging me to stay focused. I stood up, my voice rising. "You've always put Douglas first," I said, my words spilling out. "You knew he was renting out my house, didn't you? And you did nothing. You let him steal from me, and now you're here begging for him." The room went silent, the truth hanging heavy. Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't deny it. Dad's jaw tightened, his silence confirming my suspicions. I felt a mix of anger and clarity, like a fog lifting. "I'm done," I said, my voice cold but resolute. "I'm selling the Key West house. It's caused nothing but drama, and I won't let it be a weapon against me anymore. And after this, I'm done with you. All of you." Mom gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Susan, you can't mean that," she choked out. "We're your family." Joyce stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "Family doesn't manipulate and betray like this," she said, looking straight at Mom and Dad. Susan's setting boundaries, and you need to respect that. Dad shot up from the couch, his face red with anger. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're throwing away everything over your pride. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Mom stayed sobbing into her hands. Please, Susan, don't do this, she begged. We can fix this. I shook my head, my heart heavy but certain. You had years to fix this, I said quietly. You chose Douglas over me every time. I'm done letting you guilt me into giving up what's mine. I opened the door, my gesture clear. Mom stood, her shoulders shaking, and walked out, her cries echoing in the hallway. I closed the door, the sound final like a chapter ending. Derek pulled me into a hug, his voice soft. You did the right thing, he said. Joyce nodded, her eyes warm. You're stronger than they'll ever know, she added. For the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift. Setting boundaries wasn't easy, but it was freeing. I'd given my family every chance, but they'd shown me who they were. Now I was ready to move forward, no matter how much it hurt. 1 month later, Joyce and I sat down to plan my next move. We were at my kitchen table in Miami, papers spread out, coffee mugs steaming between us. The weight of my family's betrayal still lingered, but I felt a spark of determination. Joyce, ever the voice of reason, leaned forward, her eyes bright with conviction. Susan, you don't need that Key West house dragging you down, she said, tapping the table. Sell it, move on, and do something meaningful with the money. Her words hit home, and an idea formed, one that felt both liberating and defiant. I decided to sell the vacation home, but not just to cut ties. I wanted to turn this mess into something positive. After researching local charities, I chose one that supported underprivileged kids in Florida, providing them with school supplies and mentorship. Donating a chunk of the sale proceeds felt right away to reclaim my power and make a difference. Joyce grinned as I outlined the plan. This is you taking control, she said, her voice warm. Your family won't see this coming. Drafting the letter to my parents and Douglas was the hardest part. I sat at my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keys, each word deliberate. Dear Mom, Dad, and Douglas. I wrote, my tone firm but calm. I'm selling the Key West house. None of you will receive any proceeds. A portion will go to a children's charity in Florida, and the rest will secure my future. Your actions, renting out my property, breaking in and defending it, forced my hand. This is final. I read it aloud to Joyce, who nodded approvingly. It's clear, direct, and leaves no room for argument, she said. I sent the letter by certified mail, ensuring they'd all receive it, my heart pounding with a mix of resolve and relief. Derek supported the decision, though he stayed quiet as I worked through the details. You're doing what's best for you, he said, squeezing my shoulder. That evening, I contacted my real estate agent, who estimated the house could fetch a good price despite the minor damage from Douglas's break-in. The process felt like shedding a heavy weight, each step pulling me further from my family's chaos. Meanwhile, Douglas faced the consequences of his actions. Joyce, who kept tabs on local news, forwarded me a court update. Douglas had been fined $2,000 for trespassing and property damage, along with a 6-month suspended sentence. His employer, a small construction firm, let him go after the criminal record surfaced, unwilling to keep someone with a pending case. To cover the fine and his mounting debts, Douglas sold his prized pickup truck, a detail Joyce learned through a mutual acquaintance. I didn't feel joy at his downfall, but a quiet sense of justice settled in. He'd made his choices, and now he was living with them. My parents, too, were reeling. Without my financial support, something I'd quietly provided for years, from helping with their bills to maintaining the Key West house, they struggled to keep up their lifestyle. Joyce heard from a family friend that Mom and Dad had listed their second home, a small condo in Naples, to cover expenses. The news didn't surprise me. They'd relied on my generosity while siding with Douglas, and now they were scrambling. Mom tried calling once, leaving a voicemail filled with vague apologies, but I didn't respond. Dad stayed silent, as he had since the confrontation at my house. Their absence, once painful, now felt like freedom. As the sale of the Key West house moved forward, I met with the charity's director, a kind woman named Elena. I explained my plan to donate a third of the proceeds, enough to fund scholarships for dozens of kids. Elena's eyes lit up, her gratitude genuine. "This will change lives," she said, shaking my hand. I felt a warmth I hadn't in months, like I was finally building something good from the wreckage of my family's betrayal. Joyce, who joined me for the meeting, squeezed my arm. "You're turning their mess into something beautiful," she whispered. The real estate agent called a week later with an offer just above our asking price. I accepted, my heart racing as I signed the paperwork. The house, once a symbol of my generosity, had become a battleground. Letting it go was like closing a door on years of manipulation. I kept Joyce and Derek updated, their support a lifeline through the process. The charity donation was finalized soon after, and I received a heartfelt letter from Elena detailing how the funds would help kids in need. Reading it, I felt a surge of pride, something my family could never take away. As the dust settled, I realized how far I'd come. Cutting ties with my parents and Douglas wasn't just about the house, it was about reclaiming my life. Their actions had pushed me to this point, but I'd chosen to rise above, to create meaning from their chaos. Joyce and Derek stood by me, proof that family could be chosen, not just inherited. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, I felt ready to face it on my terms. 6 months later, Derek and I were living more peacefully than ever. Our Miami home, once a battleground for family drama, had become a sanctuary of calm. The absence of constant phone calls, guilt trips, and betrayals felt like a weight lifted from my shoulders. I'd spent years tangled in my family's chaos, but cutting ties had given me clarity and freedom I hadn't known I needed. Derek and I filled our days with simple joys: morning walks along the beach, quiet dinners at home, and plans for a future unburdened by their demands. I'd heard whispers about Douglas and Cheryl through mutual friends, though I no longer sought updates. Their lavish lifestyle, fancy dinners, designer clothes, and weekend getaways had crumbled under financial strain. After Douglas's fine and suspended sentence, his job loss hit them hard. Without his income, they'd sold off more than just his truck. Their boat, a symbol of their excess, was gone too. Cheryl, who'd once bragged about their perfect life, now posted less on social media, her silence telling a story of downsizing and struggle. I didn't wish them ill, but their choices had led them here, and I felt no guilt for stepping away. My parents' mom and dad had retreated into a quieter existence. After selling their Naples condo, they moved into a smaller apartment, their social circle shrinking as their finances tightened. Friends told me Mom stopped hosting her usual neighborhood gatherings, and Dad rarely left the house except for errands. They hadn't reached out since I sent the letter announcing the sale of the Key West house, and I hadn't expected them to. Their silence, once a source of pain, now felt like a gift. I'd given them so much time, money, trust, only to be met with favoritism and excuses. Letting go was my way of reclaiming my peace. Looking back, I realized how much this journey had taught me. Protecting my boundaries, even with family, wasn't selfish, it was survival. For years, I'd let guilt and obligation pull me into their chaos, thinking I owed them my loyalty. But loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing your well-being. Cutting ties wasn't about anger, it was about choosing myself, my happiness, and my future. The Key West house, once a symbol of my generosity, had become a lesson in standing firm. Selling it and donating to that children's charity in Florida felt like turning their betrayal into something meaningful, a legacy of kindness, not conflict. I thought about the kids who'd benefit from that donation, their faces bright with possibility as they received books, backpacks, and mentors. That choice, inspired by Joyce's encouragement, reminded me that family isn't just blood, it's the people who lift you up, like Joyce and Derek. They'd been my anchors, reminding me I was worth more than my family's manipulation. Every step from confronting Douglas's schemes to walking away from Mom and Dad's demands showed me the power of self-reliance. I'd built a life I was proud of, not because of them, but despite them. Now, sharing this story, I want to thank you all for listening. This hasn't been easy to tell, but it's real, raw, and a part of who I am. I hope it resonates with some of you because I know I'm not alone in navigating family drama. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone close to you? Maybe you faced betrayal or had to make a tough call to protect your peace. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your stories, your struggles, and how you've come through stronger. And if this story struck a chord, please share it. Let's spread the message that standing up for yourself, even against family, is a strength, not a flaw. Your support means the world, and I'm grateful for every one of you who's followed this journey. As I sit here reflecting on the past year, I feel lighter than ever. The house is gone, the drama is gone, and I'm left with a life that feels like mine. Derek and I are planning a trip not to escape, but to celebrate. Maybe we'll head somewhere new, somewhere that's ours, free from the shadows of my family's choices. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know I'm ready for it, grounded in the truth that my peace is worth protecting. Thank you for being here, for hearing me out, and for reminding me that stories like mine can inspire others to find their own strength.